All right, moving into the lymphatic system, guys. So the lymphatic system is a little unique in that it covers a bunch of organs, but they're spread all over the place. The main ones would be your thymus, spleen, lymph vessels, and lymph ducts. But the skin, bones, and mucous membranes all play an important part as well. So just like we have blood vessels going all over our body that carry blood, we have lymph vessels that carry lymph. So the next great question would be, what's lymph? Lymph is essentially interstitial fluid. That's the fluid between cells. And that's filled with things like waste products, like dead cells, bacteria, and the byproducts from phagocytosis. All that waste washes around until it eventually finds its way into a lymph vessel, where it's carried away to pockets called lymph nodes. These lymph vessels are very similar to veins in that they have valves that prevent backflow. Inside the lymph fluid, and even more concentrated inside the lymph nodes, are a whole host of different white blood cells that finish the work of destroying and filtering the fluid. Let's zoom in and take a look at one. So inside the lymph node, we have lymph fluid coming in from nearby tissues or from the nodes that are more distal. The vessels that bring in the fluid are called afferent lymphatic vessels. The node itself is divided by connective tissue, trabeculae, into compartments called cortical nodules. In the center of these nodules, there are these germinal centers that release lymphocytes whenever something comes into the nodule. So as lymph fluid flows in and bacteria or waste products go into the nodule, the lymphocytes come out needed. So things like infections will cause lots of viruses, bacteria, and infected or dead cells to wash up in the lymph nodes, where the lymphocytes can start cleaning up the mess. Once the fluid is cleaned up, it's moved up to the next node through more vessels, and the ones that leave the nodes are called efferent vessels. We have over 600 lymph nodes all throughout our body, but they're concentrated in areas like the jaw, the tonsils, neck, armpits, breast tissue, and inguinal areas. All of these nodes are linked together, flowing upwards towards the thoracic ducts, which drain into our left and our right subclavian vein, and then from there it goes back into central circulation. The left thoracic duct takes most of the fluid from your left side and all your lower extremities, whereas the right side only focuses on your right arm and your right torso. All right, so here's an application question. When you go to the doctor, say you've got a cold or a flu, sometimes the doc will feel your neck. Why? He's feeling your lymph nodes. If you had an infection, there would be more waste than normal, and the lymph nodes tend to swell up as that fluid fills them. So next up, we have the thymus. It's this little gland that sits behind our sternum. We have two types of lymphocytes, which if you remember from the last lesson, are created from stem cells in the red bone marrow, T and B lymphocytes. We'll talk more about their function in the next video, but for right now, just know that T lymphocytes travel from the spleen and the bone marrow all the way up to the thymus so they can grow and mature. Speaking of, let's talk about the spleen. The spleen's the largest organ in the body, and it hangs out just below the rib cage in the left upper quadrant. It's a very vascular organ, holding on to like 20 or 30% of our body's blood supply. Inside, the spleen has areas of white pulp and red pulp, areas that are filled with lymphocytes and erythrocytes, respectively. So what does the spleen do? Well, first of all, it can act like a big lymph node, filtering out and destroying bacteria and debris that's in the bloodstream. It's also a place where monocytes and lymphocytes can go to mature. Lastly, it acts as a place for storing blood and for filtering the iron or the heme out of the old red blood cells that die.